In this video, I will give you every player that you need to succeed for the first two divisional round games of the NFL playoffs on FanDuel in under 5 minutes. My name's Quick Pick Nick, and having simulated 231,660 unique lineup combinations, here are your locks and lotteries for January 16th, 2021. If you like this kind of fast-paced, calculated content, subscribe and stay tuned for more lineups throughout the season, including a DraftKings lineup for the second half of the playoffs tomorrow. And if you're looking for DraftKings advice today, let me know in the comments and I'll let you know what I found in my research of this slate. To start off this lineup with our first lock, my model will be locking in our quarterback, Lamar Jackson. After getting his bike back against the Titans last week, Jackson proved that he can perform in the playoffs, ending his winless drought in the postseason. Jackson has been on fire leading up to this point, scoring no less than 21 fantasy points over the past 6 weeks and averaging 27 fantasy points per game during that span. Buffalo is also the worst defense in this slate, allowing for the most rushing and passing yards per game to opposing teams out of these 4 options. And as the third choice on FanDuel's price list, Jackson is absolutely the best pick at quarterback today, taking into account his recent domination, optimal matchup, and relatively low cost. For the next 2 locks, we'll be taking our 2 running backs as my model chose Aaron Jones and Cam Akers. While the Rams will certainly be a challenge for all players on the Packers, Jones should still see some solid usage, as Green Bay may not be able to rely on Aaron Rodgers to get the job done by himself this time around. Last week in the wildcard round, Chris Carson of the Seahawks managed 77 yards on the ground alone, with little involvement through the air on just 1 reception. Jones should be able to get that much and then some, and he's typically more involved in the pass game for the Packers as well, averaging over 25 pass yards per game in addition to his 78 yards per game on the ground. So Jones should be able to serve as that versatile role in Green Bay to keep the Rams on their toes while potentially earning himself a goal line touchdown along the way. As for Akers, his matchup is much more promising, as although Green Bay is still quite an imposing defense compared to the Rams, the Packers are far more forgiving, allowing 112.8 rushing yards per game, ranking 13th in that category. Last week, we all saw Akers explode, rushing for over 130 yards and a touchdown on top of 45 receiving yards, which pretty much cemented Akers as the top running back in LA, as he has averaged nearly 23 carries per game over the past 5 weeks. With such consistent volume and such a huge performance last week against Seattle's tough rush defense, which ended the season ranking 5th in rush yards allowed per game, Akers should be able to continue to act as the Rams' workhorse. For the final lock, we'll be taking our first wide receiver, as my model chose Cole Beasley. Even with the return of John Brown last week and a bothering knee injury, Beasley was able to continue to perform at a high level against the Colts of all teams, bringing in all 7 of his targets. This kind of high volume has been a trend for Beasley during this latter half of the season, as he has averaged about 8.5 targets per game over his past 7 contests. And that kind of consistency is something you should be looking for in your lineup. Although Beasley does face Baltimore's 6th ranked defense in pass yards allowed per game, there really aren't any great matchups this week, with 3 of the 4 teams ranking in the top 7 in that category, and the Bills falling just outside at 14, so we should be in good shape sticking with Beasley. To take advantage of that weak secondary in Buffalo, our first lottery will be our tight end, as my model chose Mark Andrews. Andrews ranks 4th in receiving yards per game among tight ends, and has the best matchup with respect to the opposing pass defense, so for a few hundred more than the next option of Tonyan, Andrews is a great play here. The reason he's a lottery is because Tonyan is also pretty good, but he'll face that stout Rams defense, so I'll take the favored matchup with Andrews instead. The 2 lottery receivers my model picked are Devontae Adams and Cooper Kupp. The former was chosen for obvious reasons, and the latter because he was cheap. Adams has been dominant all season and has that once-in-a-generation type connection with Aaron Rodgers, but the reason he's a lottery is because of that Rams defense I've been talking about, as Adams will draw a matchup from one of the best defensive players in the NFL, Jalen Ramsey. So for $9,000 on FanDuel, you'll be banking on Adams to continue to produce, even with tight coverage, which is why he's a lottery. As for Kupp, he's the cheapest wide receiver before you get into those unreliable picks, and as a wide receiver who kind of shares the spotlight as the top receiving option on his team with Robert Woods, Kupp is a great pick for just $6,100 on FanDuel. For the defense, it seems like the Ravens is the best choice, simply because there aren't going to be many safe defenses here with some of the best offenses playing against each other, and the money save is substantial as well. The flex we're left with is Devin Singletary, who I hesitate to take because he hasn't really proved anything throughout the season, but he will take over lead running back responsibilities for the Bills, with Zach Moss finding himself on IR, meaning Singletary could have a huge opportunity against the Ravens. If you're not sold on Singletary, or any other player in this lineup for that matter, there were some other guys who couldn't make the cut due to budgetary issues that still seem like good picks, including Marquise Brown, who may also take advantage of that weak Buffalo pass defense, and J.K. Dobbins for a similar reason but with Buffalo's bad rush defense. That's what my model was able to come up with for the doubleheader divisional playoff special on FanDuel for today, Saturday, January 16th. This has been Quick Pick Nick, the intersection for sports, data analysis, and speed. Thanks for watching.